Real-time strategy is perhaps the first genre of video games I ever played. Well, either that or those breakfast CDs. But RTS has remained near and dear to me throughout the years. Build a base, gather resources, make an army, win. Easy to learn, hard to master. And one game stuck longer than most. Starcraft and Starcraft 2. Yes! A three-way war between psychic aliens, space bugs, and ape drugs? What's not to love? However, over the last year, I felt compelled to turn my attention away from this classic and venture further into the RTS iceberg. After all, Starcraft isn't the only game that defined the genre. There's a whole world of series that built RTS into what it is today. And so I set out on my merry quest to experience what other real-time strategy games had to offer. Please note, I'll be ranking all of these for fun. I'm a single-player player, and my view will obviously be skewed since my first time playing most of these was for challenge runs. Also, because I'm lazy, I'm putting the base games and expansions on the same list. Will this be a fair and balanced assessment? Nope. Do I care? Absolutely not.
Greetings, sire. The desert awaits you.
Believe it or not, Starcraft is not the first RTS game I ever played. That honor would go to Stronghold Crusader, the second game in a series plagued with inconsistent quality and performance issues. It single-handedly ignited my interest in strategy as a young child, and also traumatized me.
You are weak and not fit to command an army.
Crusader is more accurately described as an RTS castle sim and focuses not only on classic features like chopping wood and committing Warcraft very unpeaceful acts, but also how to keep your people well-fed and happy. If everyone hates you, no one will fight for you. But if you're too kind, people get lazy. It's complex enough that you have numerous strategies to rally your peasants, but not so complicated that you get overwhelmed with daily minutia. Stronghold 2. The game's two main factions are, you guessed it, Crusaders and Arabians. The former focuses on brute force while the latter excels at harassment and subterfuge. The various AI lords usually stick to one or the other, but occasionally some overlap does occur. As for the lords themselves, their personalities and playstyles vary wildly. The rat is completely useless, the Nazir spams assassins, Richard and Saladin spam everything, and the wolf spends the entire game making wildly impractical fortresses. There is one character that hasn't aged well.
Infidel!
For reference, Kane's supposed to be the Muslim Pope, so That aside, Crusader has a nice balance of peace and war, with a skirmish trail to beat up AI opponents, a short but sweet historical campaign covering the First and Third Crusades, and also a castle builder mode, which lets you build castles.
The people trust you, my lord.
This combined with a phenomenal sound design and killer soundtrack, and I can't help but put this in A. Why only A tier? Because of Crusader's age, it was very hard to get it installed to my laptop, let alone play it properly. It also doesn't like OBS, and I can just barely record it with Bandicam. Notice I sped up the footage for most of this. So for these technical issues, I just can't place it in S tier.
Damn you, boy! I will have revenge.
Crusader Extreme. Imagine Crusader, but worse. Take everything good I said about the base game and toss it out a window. Extreme decided that the formula wasn't good enough, and thought it'd be fun to give you magic powers and outposts that spam infinite units. It's not. There's no new campaign, no castle builder, and the skirmish trail boils down to cheesing the outposts or turtling until you can use the rock power. Your biggest enemy will be lag from all the units that keep spawning. The funny thing is, once you get past the outposts, the AI tends to be really passive because the maps weren't set up to give them a good economy. The final mission doesn't even have iron on the map. Guess who needs iron to make units? At least the support towers are kinda interesting, otherwise D tier. Yet again, another RTS that I played before discovering Starcraft. This is the first 3D title for the series, and it's definitely a title. Stronghold 2 shifts the setting back to medieval England and adds a whole host of factors to worry about. You now have to gain honor through events like feasts and jousts to hire certain units, but you also have to worry about rats, thieves, and poop. Yes, exactly what I play RTS for. Poop. The game also has a campaign, and it's okay. You must stop Mr. Clean from taking the throne, but you can also betray your friends and be evil.
Your treachery is beyond measure, Matthew.
That's cool. There's a couple clever moments here and there.
Bring him down! idiot!
Oh, and here are the sheep I promised.
Thank you, Friar Jacob. I shall send word to Sir William.
Great. What am I to do with sheep? Give them each a sword and send them forth into battle?
And some interesting mission ideas when they don't glitch out. Mission 5 sees us use catapults to fight Vikings. There's storyteller segments that give additional context. Now the main problem is that oftentimes you're bogged down with daily minutia like rats and poop. While these factors are interesting in a castle builder or peace mode, which actually focuses on these mechanics, the fact that they're included in the war campaign drags the experience for me. Unless I speed things up, of course. Also, the game's graphics and sounds haven't aged particularly well. Sound effects will overlap at times, and voice lines during cutscenes will cut each other off.
The king is poisoned. Apothecary.
Knowing his life hung by a thread, the king summoned Sir William to his side.
Your Majesty, I shall watch our borders most carefully.
And that is the story of how the king was poisoned.
The visuals have also seen better days.
What is that?
What else can I say? The music's nice, the intro cutscene is hype, the Viking dude was really scary when I was younger.
Build your castle well.
There's some interesting physics, siege weapons and traps will send people flying. There's also a fun siege mode that lets you attack or defend historical castles and does away with the annoying castle stuff, so that's cool. Ultimately, I give it a low B tier. Not great, but better than I remember. Back to the present. My first foray outside of Starcraft was, naturally, its sister game, Warcraft. Warcraft 3 ups the ante by having not 2, not 3, but 4 different factions beating each other up. It's not without its differences from Starcraft, like a lower supply limit or a greater focus on hero units, but these give it a unique charm. Each faction is distinct, with the undead using corpses to grow their army, while night elves, you guessed it, get stronger at night. They all have awesome soundtracks and interesting characters. As for campaigns, the human story is hands down one of the best I've played, and the tale of Prince Arthas falling from loved paladin to hated death knight is great. The undead campaign is much more bare bones. But it's still a fun time demolishing the pathetic kingdoms of humans and elves. The Orc campaign following Thrall is an odd shift, especially since early Thrall sucks, but the tale of the once villainous orcs turning good is a nice contrast from Arthas' corruption. Admittedly, the resolution between the Alliance and Horde seems a tad rushed, and the final showdown with Grom and Manaroth is also kinda underwhelming, but nevertheless a fine campaign. The Night Elf campaign is probably the weakest in my opinion, mainly for the length, but also because the resolution with the humans and orcs is even quicker.
I'm fast as boy.
Regardless, the Night Elf soundtrack bops and the missions we get have unique scenarios, with the final mission being one of my favorite of all time. A defense mission with 3 factions against an unending wave of undead is a great way to end the game. S tier for sure. After defeating literal demonic overlords, how could one top Reign of Chaos? Fish people. Well, technically there were fish people in the last game, but these are different fish people. Frozen Throne adds a lot to the game. To address the issue of mass spellcasters, it adds numerous units designed to counter them, such as Spellbreakers to steal buffs or Destroyers to steal mana. Each race gets a new, fancy soundtrack, the supply limit is increased, and various units like the Necromancer are given buffs. As for the campaigns, they're a mixed bag. The Sentinels campaign tells a tragic tale of the jailer Maiev, who watched her sisters get slaughtered because her superiors deemed his freedom necessary. As she pursues Illidan, she loses more and more of herself, eventually becoming the same monster that she vowed to hunt down. It's great. Then she shows up for one more mission and disappears for the rest of the story. The Alliance, or more accurately, Blood Elf campaign, is a similar tragedy. After losing their ancestral homeland, the High Elves are betrayed by their allies and forced to work with dark powers to survive. Also, tower defense. Really, the biggest criticisms I'd have for the campaign are its short length, overt focus on Illidan and the Naga instead of the titular Blood Elves, and the lack of focus on Jaina and the rest of the Alliance. The Undead campaign is probably the best of the 4. It has a good length and isn't restricted by just one perspective. We get a dual campaign between Arthas and Sylvanas, with the former gradually losing power throughout his journey, as the latter gains it. It all culminates in the grand showdowns between Sylvanas and Balnazzar and Arthas and Illidan. paladin. Really, the only criticism I'd have for it is not enough Kel'Thuzad. Our favorite lich just kind of disappears after Mission 2, and this is unacceptable. The Orc campaign, or really World of Warcraft Lite, is much more disconnected from the main story, and is a drastic shift from RTS in favor of 3 RPG-style missions. While it's fun for a time, the many quest lines make playing the missions feel like a drag. I appreciate the concept, but the campaign might have benefited from splitting some of the main quests into separate missions. It's cool to build a party of unstoppable badasses, but much of the campaign's dialogue centers around Rexxar, leaving Rokan and Chen suspiciously mute most of the time. As a result, it's a campaign that feels bloated and barren at the same time. Frozen Throne has greater highs and greater lows than Reign of Chaos, so I rate it at high A tier. It's the funny Tim Curry game.
I'm escaping to the one place that hasn't been corrupted by capitalism. Space!
That aside, Red Alert 3 is surprisingly good. It's colorful, it's campy, and has 3 diverse factions to play around with, from the rough and tough Soviets to the enigmatic Advanced Empire to the boring one. What's not to love?
You are made of stupid.
Perhaps the most interesting aspect of the game and the series are the live-action cutscenes. Whereas modern games love to motion capture actors in, Command & Conquer does away with that nonsense and films them hamming it up.
You will bow before us, or you will cease to exist.
This, coupled with the whole time travel plot, cements this as one of the silliest games I've played, but it works. The game also has co-op. You can play the campaign with a friend, or just have an AI help you out.
My name is Kenji, and I will protect you as best I can.
And unlike AI allies in other games,
my hive cluster won't survive much longer. Disable the crystals now!
The Red Alert 3 allies actually get things done. One difference I found apparent is the lack of a supply limit. While Starcraft and Warcraft have limits on how big your army can get, Command & Conquer games restrict how big your bases can get. Power is the main factor. More structures means more power is needed, which certainly puts more emphasis on base management. Ultimately, the only real issues I have with the game are the pathfinding, which, while not Starcraft levels of bad, can still be awkward at times. A tier.
What have you done, you idiot?
As with most expansions, this one comes along to ruin the fun. No more co-op commanders, fewer resources, the campaign's really short, a ton of broken and annoying units to deal with. Also, a bunch of commanders have been replaced in this one, and it's just not the same.
I have nothing.
I don't have much else to say. There's a nice mini-campaign for Yuriko, the psychic commander of the Empire, and there's a cool challenge mode where you slowly unlock each faction's hardware, I guess. Otherwise, C tier. Sorry, wrong game. Age of Mythology is an intriguing game. Not only do you control 3 different civilizations, but you also have access to their pantheons. As the Greeks, you get the powers of Olympus, as the Egyptians, the strength of the underworld, and the Norse, the might of Asgard. The fact that you can choose which god to favor from mission to mission is a nice boon. The campaign is interesting in that it mainly follows the ancient Greeks, who then come across the Egyptians and Norse throughout the story. While I do wish they'd given more emphasis on the pantheons of Egypt and Scandinavia, having a band of multinational heroes working together against an international conspiracy is really fun. The villains are kinda lame though, ultimately not my favorite RTS, but still a worthwhile play. A tier. This game takes the fun out of Mythology. The campaign is really short. It forgoes introducing pantheons from actual civilizations like China or India in favor of the fictional Atlanteans. Though given what I've heard about Tale of the Dragon, maybe that's for the best. And the main character is super dumb. Like, Caster, stop killing your dad's friends. Also, if Arcantos is a god now, why doesn't he just pop down and tell Caster to stop being dumb? Anyways, the difficulty spike in this game is incredibly high, with attack waves that feel kind of unfair. While it was nice to learn more about the predecessors of Olympus, ultimately, Titans was a disappointing and underwhelming expansion. C tier. Tiberium Wars is an interesting case. I wasn't initially sold on the game, mainly due to the difficulty spike compared to other games. This, coupled with the lack of co-op commanders, led me to sideline it in favor of Red Alert 3. However, upon completing the campaign, I can safely say Tiberium Wars is a good game. Sure, the lighting can be a bit much at times. Sure, the attack waves can also be kind of unfair, but once you get past that, it's satisfying to beat. Unlike Red Alert 3, the main resource here is Tiberium, a magic rock that does magical things. The government want to destroy it, the Brotherhood wants to use it, and the aliens want to mine it. Fairly simple, typical B-movie stuff. But one can't deny that it embraces those tropes well. GDI has powerful vehicles and orbital weapons, Nod has fanatics, flamethrowers, and drugs, and the Skrin have legions of insectoid robots with some of the most broken capital ships I've ever seen. Anywho, the campaigns are incredibly difficult, at times tedious, but doable. And I think it's the satisfaction of beating them, despite the amount of punishment they throw at you, that makes the game enjoyable in the end. Unlike Red Alert 3, the campaigns are all canon and happen around the same time, meaning we get different perspectives on certain locations like the White House, Sarajevo, and Italy. Really, the only criticism I'd have for the campaigns is the incredibly short Skrin campaign, which, while fun, is over too soon for my liking. A surprise to be sure, but an A-tier one. As far as expansions go, Kane's Wrath is an expansion. Just kidding, it's pretty good. It brings back a lot of older units from previous games, adds some depth to the game with different sub-factions, and also has a fun campaign. Well, not campaign. I can't really comment on the GDI or Skrin campaigns because they never got made. Nevertheless, playing as an AI caught up in rivalries with Nod's leadership and the Skrin invasion is a good time. Really, my only criticism is that refineries now cost 3,000 Tiberium.
Spare change. Spare change, ma'am.
Oh, also there's a global conquest mode where you basically play a board game to take over the world. Each faction has their own unique goals and powers, with GDI needing to take territory, Nod fomenting revolution, and the Skrin making more towers. Each group can make strike forces to create bases or beat each other up.
The Cavalry will wipe you from the face of this world.
There are preset groups, but you can also make custom forces and name them.
Y'all need some good old-fashioned discipline.
Air units are pretty broken. Fights can either be auto-resolved or played like regular matches. Since there's dozens of fights in a given match, it's usually better to auto-resolve. I found Nod easier to play than the other factions at first, since it's cheaper to make bases for income, and they only have to spread revolution to cities, not take territory. Ultimately, because it lacks campaigns for the other factions, I do have to rate it lower. If you're gonna have factions, gotta let me do actions. B tier. Warhammer. Apparently this is what Starcraft was based off of.
Unimaginable heresy.
Anywho, the base game is pretty fun. It's got cool characters, a great soundtrack, and just like Command & Conquer, it knows how to make humans interesting. Make them racist.
Beware the alien, the mutant, the heretic.
Wait, that's just real life. The campaign focuses on Gabriel Angelos and the Blood Ravens, a chapter of the Imperial Space Marines who defend the planet Tartarus against space orcs, space elves, and evil space marines. Actually, the Imperium's pretty bad too. Crazy evil space marines.
Cleanse, purge, kill.
Oh, for demonic crazy evil space marines. Wait, the Imperium has demons too? Through various trials and betrayals, the journey culminates in a rather underwhelming fight with a demon prince. Dawn of War's campaign also suffers from same objectivitis, a condition where various missions all have the same goals with slight differences. In this case, it's destroying the enemy base. Around half of the missions in the campaign suffer from this, with most occurring in the first half. This isn't to say that each mission is the exact same, but when you alternate between destroying bases in a city, then a forest, then a city, then a forest, it's pretty noticeable. In addition, you only get to play as the Blood Ravens for the campaign. Any game that doesn't let me play as every faction will always be rated lower in my eyes. If you're gonna have factions, best let me do actions. Thankfully, there are tutorials for the other races, but it's still disappointing. Another disappointment is the lack of a proper resolution for modern PCs. Despite my best efforts, I could not get the screen size to work with my laptop. Now don't get all worked up thinking I hate this game. It does several things well. For one, you get resources by controlling points on the map. This forces you to take territory rather than turtle in your base. You also get to customize squads with different weapons. This allows certain units plenty of utility. If you're going up against armor, get missiles. For infantry, get bolters. The game also incorporates morale, a factor I haven't really seen much outside of Stronghold Crusader. If a squad's morale is broken by explosions or flamethrowers, they can't fight, so make sure to get sergeants to rally your forces, or commissars to shoot people.
If you will not serve in combat, then you will serve on the firing line.
Ultimately, I give the original Dawn of War top of B tier. It just doesn't quite break into A tier for me.
Heresy, bro.
Warcraft orcs be like, is this our destiny? To go on fighting the humans forever? Warhammer orcs be like, of course it is, you Kane. Come on, boys. We got humies to smash.
This is gonna be a squeak feast.
Winter Assault is probably my favorite out of the Dawn of War expansions. Dare I say, it's better than the base game. Not only do they let you actually play as the other factions in single player, but there are even missions that let you switch sides and multiple endings depending on who you win with. The campaign is set on Lorne 5, where 4 armies battle over the Titan Dominatus. The Imperial Guard, Eldar, Orcs, and Chaos all seek to control or destroy the Titan and form shaky alliances to do so. Playing as the Guard, you see a different side from the incompetent mess in Dawn of War. Stern is a shrewd but brave commander, leading his men against impossible odds. The Eldar under Taldir show a treacherous side, constantly backstabbing the humans aiding them, while fighting for the greater good, not that greater good, against the undead Necrons. The Orcs just want to wage war, and Gorguts and his lieutenant have some funny banter here and there.
And you know how I'm getting him to come after me? You're gonna call him a grot? We'll call that plan stupid. I named it after you. Hey, why's you grinning? Because you named a plan after me!
While Chaos Lord Krull hopes to possess my eardrums.
Do you hear? Mine!
My biggest criticism is the length of each campaign. With each only lasting 6 missions, the so-called alliances and the switching mechanics don't come into play as much as they could have. Nevertheless, I definitely enjoyed this campaign the most out of all the Dawn of War campaigns. A tier. I've only finished Dark Crusade with the Necron, so it's probably unfair to give it a rating at this point, but fair and balanced assessments are overrated. Dark Crusade differs from the previous entries by minimizing the story and turning the campaign into a 25-province slugfest with 7 different factions: the Space Marines, Orcs, Eldar, Chaos, Imperial Guard, Necrons, and Tau. Each controls a stronghold and must defeat the other 6 armies. If you die in the stronghold, you die in real life, so guard it well. Each province must be fought over and provides resources to reinforce your armies. Certain provinces give special powers like bonus money or the blood of your enemies, granting you 1 extra move per turn. The problem is that provinces can be attacked and defended repeatedly. Now you could auto-resolve and let the AI choose for you, but unless you're some tech bro simping for those cyber cheeks, it's best to fight manually. This can lead to problems like the Imperial Guard attacking the exact same province a dozen times, forcing you to play through the same map a dozen times. Now the good news is that buildings you make in a captured province stay there. The bad news is, if the AI wants it, so do you. This drags the experience out, and coupled with the minimal story means there's long stretches of waiting for something to actually happen. It's a shame because the banter in the game is genuinely good.
Took you long enough to get to me, didn't it?
Chaos moves at its own pace, alien, not yours.
How about dying? Do you do that any faster? I got to plan the rest of me day.
I will miss this banter once you are dead, Orc.
The strongholds each have different defenses and objectives, and the special provinces change up the mechanics a little. Ultimately, I'm more for story-driven games, but I do recognize the variety in gameplay, the cool customization, and the story when it shows up. A tier. So can you enjoy RTS games without Starcraft? Surprisingly, yes. There are numerous games that rival Starcraft in terms of gameplay and story. Even the worst entries on this list still had some semblance of fun. Now, this isn't meant to be a slam on Starcraft. I love the series to death. Heck, it helped my channel grow, and it's probably the only thing keeping it growing. But RTS is more than just Sunbuild the sequel. It's Command & Conquer, Warcraft, Age of Mythology, Dawn of War, Stronghold. It has so many different mechanics and universes, and I wanted to shed a spotlight on that. It was here before Starcraft, and it'll be here long after. Age of Empires Caveman run next. No advancement, only clubs. Feel free to sign up for Patreon, unless you're broke like me. Be nice to get a new one, but, you know, only if you can. Shoutouts to Time, Gladys Marino, Happy Acrid, Jen Tuong, Michael Phillips, and Mike Pierce for continuing to pay my taxes. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, share, comment, subscribe, and show some love to your favorite non-StarCraft RTS sometime. It's often been said that RTS is a dead genre, that its glory days have come and gone. But I think they're advancing in a new direction. Is it a good one? Only the Emperor knows, brother. Now come, to battle! Hell, it's about time.
The people trust you, my lord.
Heresy grows.